3 days. That's how long Jessie Simon had been hiding a bruise, the size of a fist on her cheekbone. 3 days since her father, the man who once carried her on his shoulders, had struck her in a moment of drunken shame. But makeup only works until someone looks too close. And Kim Min-jun, the Korean Mafia boss who ran the underground clinic in Miami, always looked too close when it came to Jessie. On Wednesday night, 10:47 p.m., his hand tilted her face toward the light with a gentleness that didn't match his reputation. "Who did this to you?" Her voice came out broken, barely a whisper. "My father." What happened next would either save her family or destroy what little was left of it. Because when a man like Min-jun decides someone he cares about has been hurt, there are no half measures. Only choices that change everything. Min-jun didn't move. His hand stayed gentle under her chin, but his eyes, those dark, calculating eyes, went cold in a way that made the air in the room shift. "Your father," he repeated, and it wasn't a question. Jessie tried to pull away, tried to slip back into the professional mask she'd worn for 8 months in this clinic. "It's fine. He didn't mean to." "Stop. One word, quiet, final. Don't protect someone who hurt you." And just like that, the dam broke. Not dramatically. Jessie Simon had never been dramatic. But 2 years of carrying everything, of pretending she was strong enough, of working herself into the ground while her family fell apart around her. It all came pouring out in that fluorescent-lit room that smelled like antiseptic and secrets. Min-jun guided her to the chair in the corner, crouched in front of her in his expensive suit, and waited. He was good at waiting, good at reading people. It's how he'd survived in a world where one wrong move could end you. "My mom died 2 years ago," Jessie whispered. "Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. By the time they found it, we had 9 months. I took care of her at home. Watched her waste away in the living room, where we used to watch Jeopardy together every night." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "The medical bills were $180,000, even with insurance. We spent everything, sold everything we could. It still wasn't enough." Min-jun said nothing, just listened with an intensity that made her feel seen for the first time in months. Dad couldn't handle it. Losing her broke something in him. He started drinking, gambling, DraftKings, whatever he could find. Lost his job. I picked up extra shifts at Tampa General. Started working here for the cash, because we were going to lose the house. Our house, where I grew up, where Mom died. Her voice cracked. "My brother Charles is still at UF because that's what Mom wanted. Someone in our family getting their degree, living a normal life. So I work 60 hours a week, and send him money and pretend everything's fine." She touched the bruise on her cheek, winced. 3 nights ago, Dad came to my room drunk. Wanted to lecture me about working too much, about how I'm going to end up like Mom, working myself to death. I told him he lost the right to have opinions about my life, when I became the only one keeping us afloat. A tear slid down her face. He hit me, just once. Then he stood there looking at his hand like he didn't recognize it. I heard him crying in the hallway, but I locked my door and pretended it never happened. Because if I acknowledged it, then I'd have to deal with it. And I don't have the energy to deal with one more thing. She looked up at Min-jun, exhausted and ashamed, and so tired. I've been covering it with makeup for 3 days. Going to work, smiling, acting normal, because that's what I do. I'm good at pretending everything's fine. Min-jun stood slowly, pulled out his phone. "You're done for tonight. Go home. Rest." "Min-jun, I need this job." "You'll still have it Monday." His voice was gentle but left no room for argument. "But right now, you need to go home." What Jessie didn't know was that Min-jun had already made a decision. 1 phone call. That's all it would take. Wednesday night, after Jessie left the clinic, Min-jun made a decision. 1 phone call. That's all it would take. He called his investigator, a woman named Rebecca, who used to work for the FBI, before she decided private consulting paid better and asked fewer questions. "Everything on Julius Simon," he said. Respectfully. "I don't want dirt. I want the truth. I need it by Friday." By Friday afternoon, the file landed on his desk at his construction company office in Coral Gables. Min-jun read it over coffee from his Nespresso machine, the one luxury he allowed himself during work hours. Julius Simon, 58 years old, former construction foreman, solid work history until 2 years ago. Then everything collapsed like a house with a cracked foundation. $47,000 in debt. Online poker. Credit cards maxed out at nearly 30% interest. a local bookie named Tommy who operated out of a bar in Tampa. The house, the Simon family home, was 3 months behind on the mortgage. Another 2 months, and the bank would foreclose. But then Min-jun saw something that made him pause. 3 weeks ago, Julius had started attending AA meetings at St. Michael's Church, Tampa. Tuesday and Thursday nights, 7 p.m. sharp. He'd been going consistently. 19 days sober before Wednesday night. And then Rebecca had found the journal. Julius kept it in his truck, a beat-up phone 50 he'd had since before Linda got sick. Spiral-bound notebook from CVS, the kind you buy when you're trying to piece your life back together, 1 page at a time. Rebecca had photographed several entries. Min-jun read them twice. Day 1. 1 week sober. Told my sponsor what I did. He said I need to tell Jessie I'm trying. How do I tell her when I've already broken her trust? Day 7. 2 weeks. I watch Jessie leave for work every morning at 5:30 a.m. She thinks I'm passed out drunk. Doesn't know I'm sober. Doesn't know I'm trying. Day 14. Tomorrow I'm going to tell her everything. The meetings, the sobriety, the debt. I'm going to ask for help. I'm terrified she'll say no. Day 19. I hit Jessie tonight. Hit my daughter. Linda would never forgive me. God help me. I will never forgive myself. Day 20. I relapsed. Bought a bottle. Drank it all. Went to her room to apologize and hit her instead. I am my father. I am the thing I swore I'd never become. Min-jun closed the file and sat in silence, looking out at the Miami skyline. Julius Simon wasn't a monster. He was a father drowning in grief, trying to save himself, and failing because he was doing it alone. Min-jun understood that better than most people would guess. On Saturday afternoon, he called Jessie and asked her to meet him at the clinic. When she arrived, he was already there, sitting at the small desk with photocopies of the journal pages spread out in front of him. "What is this?" she asked. "Sit." She sat. He slid the pages across to her without explanation. Jessie picked up the first page, started reading. Her hands began to shake halfway through the second page. "Where did you get these?" "Your father keeps a journal in his truck. These are from the last 3 weeks." She read all of them. Every word. When she finished, she just sat there, staring at her father's handwriting, his confessions, his desperate attempts at recovery that she'd known nothing about. "He was trying," she whispered. "He's been going to AA for 3 weeks, and I didn't know. We've been living in the same house, and I had no idea he was trying to get better." The tears came then, and Min-jun moved around the desk to crouch beside her chair. She turned into him, sobbing into his shoulder while he held her steady. "We've been drowning separately," she gasped between tears. "In the same house. Both of us trying to survive, and neither of us asking for help." Min-jun let her cry until she had nothing left. Then he said the words that would change everything. "Sunday morning. You, your brother Charles, and your father. One honest conversation. At your dining table." She pulled back, looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. "What are you talking about? I'm going to help you, help your family. But first, you all need to tell each other the truth. No more hiding, no more pretending. Min-jun, we can't afford. I'll handle the money. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking if you're willing to sit down with your father and your brother and have the hardest conversation of your life." Jessie sat with that for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Okay. Call Charles. Tell him to come home." That night, Jessie sat in her childhood bedroom and called her brother. He answered on the third ring, music playing in the background. College life, normal life. The life she'd sacrificed everything to give him. "Hey Jess, what's up?" She took a breath. "I need you to come home Sunday morning." The music stopped. "Is Dad okay?" "It's about Dad. And about all of us. Please, Charles. I need you here." There was a pause. Then, "Okay, I'll leave Saturday night. Thank you." She hung up and looked around her room. The same room she'd slept in as a child. The same view of the backyard where her mother used to garden. The same house that had become a prison of grief and secrets. Tomorrow, everything would change. Before we see what happens when this broken family finally tells each other the truth, kindly like this video and hit that subscribe button, because what comes next will either save them or destroy what's left. And you won't want to miss a single moment. Sunday morning came too fast and too slow at the same time. Jessie woke at 6, made coffee in the old Mr. Coffee machine that had been her mother's, and waited. She heard Charles's car pull up at 8:30. Her brother looked tired, older somehow, like the drive from Gainesville had aged him. They didn't hug, just nodded at each other in the kitchen, while the coffee brewed. By 10 a.m., they were sitting at the dining table, the same table where they used to eat Sunday dinner as a family, where Linda would serve pot roast and ask about everyone's week, where life had been normal once. Now there were only 3 of them, and her mother's empty chair sat at the end like a ghost. Julius looked sober, clear-eyed, terrified. Charles looked confused, his University of Florida hoodie wrinkled from the drive. And Jessie looked exhausted in a way that went deeper than lack of sleep. "Okay," Charles said finally, glancing between them. "What's going on? You sounded serious on the phone." Jessie turned her face toward the window light. The bruise had faded to yellow-green, but it was still visible, still there. Charles's eyes widened. "Jess, what happened to your face?" She looked directly at their father. "Dad did this." The air left the room. Julius closed his eyes, his hands flat on the table like he was trying to hold himself together. "I did. 3 nights ago. I was drunk and I hit my daughter and there's no excuse for it." Charles stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. "You hit her?" "Sit down, Charles," Jessie said quietly. "There's more." She pulled the photocopied journal pages from the folder beside her and spread them across the table like evidence. "He's also been going to AA for 3 weeks, 19 days sober before he relapsed. He keeps a journal. These are pages from it." Charles picked up a page, started reading. His expression shifted from anger to confusion to something that looked like grief. "You were trying?" Charles's voice cracked. "You've been trying to get sober and you didn't tell us?" Julius's hands were shaking. "I lost myself when your mother died. I watched her waste away and I couldn't save her. And when she was gone, I didn't know how to be a person anymore. I became your burden instead of your father." "Dad," Jessie started. "No, let me finish." Julius looked at both of them, tears streaming down his face. "I gambled, because it was the only time I felt anything besides grief. I drank because it was easier than facing what I'd become. And I hit you, Jessie, because I was ashamed and angry at myself, and I took it out on you. There's no forgiveness for that." Charles was crying now, too. "I hid at school while Jessie carried everything. I'd come home for Christmas and see how tired you looked, Jess, and I'd go back to campus and pretend it wasn't happening. I'm a coward." "You're not," Jessie tried. "I am," Charles cut her off. "I've been seeing a therapist at UF for depression. Started last semester. Never told either of you, because I didn't want to add to the problems. So I just stayed away and let you drown, while I pretended to have a normal college life." Jessie's turn. She took a breath. "I've been working for a criminal organization. The clinic in Miami, it's run by the Korean Mafia. I treat gunshot wounds and knife injuries, and ask no questions for $150 cash per shift because we needed the money. I've been angry at both of you for 2 years. Angry at Dad for falling apart. Angry at you, Charles, for getting to escape. But mostly I'm angry at myself." She wiped her eyes. "I'm angry because I never asked for help. I just kept working and working, like if I could just hold everything together, somehow Mom wouldn't really be gone." For 30 minutes, they talked, really talked. Said things they'd been holding in for 2 years. They'd been living like ghosts in their mother's tomb, haunting the same house but never really seeing each other. The doorbell rang. Jessie stood. "There's someone I need you to meet." Min-Jun stood on the porch in dark jeans and a simple button-down, looking less like a crime boss and more like someone's well-dressed friend. He waited until Jessie invited him in, didn't sit until Julius gestured to a chair. "This is Min-Jun Kim," Jessie said. "He runs the clinic where I work. He's the one who found Dad's journal." Charles looked suspicious. Julius looked wary. Min-Jun addressed Julius directly, respectfully. "Mr. Simon, I know about your debt. $47,000 across multiple creditors. I know you've been attending AA. I know you're trying to rebuild your life." He paused. "I want to help. Not charity, a business arrangement. I pay off your debt immediately. You come work for my construction company at $75,000 a year. You repay me $1,000 a month until we're even. I also bring your mortgage current." Julius's jaw tightened. "I don't take charity from criminals." "It's not charity," Min-Jun said calmly. "You'll repay every dollar through honest work. This preserves your dignity while giving you breathing room to stay sober. My only condition is that you commit to AA and sobriety. And if I relapse, then we figure it out. Recovery isn't linear." Julius looked at Jessie, really looked at her. What do you want? She'd been waiting 2 years for him to ask her that. I want you to get better, Dad. I want to be your daughter again, not your caretaker. I want Sunday dinners that don't feel like funerals. Julius stared at Minjun's outstretched hand for a long moment. Then he shook it. Okay. Charles cleared his throat. I'm taking this semester off. Coming home. I'm done running away from this family. Charles, your degree, Jessie started, will still be there next fall. But right now you two need me here. And honestly, I need to be here. They sat around that table, the 4 of them now, and for the first time in 2 years, there was something in that house besides grief. There was hope. The first month felt like learning to breathe again. Julius started showing up in the kitchen at 5:30 every morning, already showered and dressed for work. The first time Jessie came downstairs to find him making coffee in the old Mr. Coffee machine, she almost turned around and went back to her room. Made enough for 2, he said, not looking at her. She sat down at the kitchen table. They drank their coffee in silence, but it was a different kind of silence than before. Not the heavy, suffocating kind, just quiet. By the second week, they were talking. Small things, the weather, traffic on I-275. Julius mentioned his new construction project in Clearwater. Jessie talked about a difficult patient at Tampa General. It wasn't much, but it was something. Julius's first week at Minjun's construction company, he came home exhausted but clear-eyed. Forgot what it feels like to be tired from actual work instead of hungover, he said at dinner. 30 days later, he got his 1-month chip at the AA meeting. Charles and Jessie went with him, watched him stand up in front of strangers and say, "My name is Julius, and I'm an alcoholic. 30 days sober." They clapped until their hands hurt. Charles found a job at an LA Fitness near USF, teaching cycling classes and personal training. Got a small studio apartment 10 minutes from the house. Close enough to help, he told Jessie. Far enough that we don't drive each other crazy. He came home for Sunday dinners, though. Every single week. Jessie quit the clinic. Told Minjun she couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't keep working in that world. He didn't argue, just nodded and said, "I understand." She cut her hospital shifts to 40 hours. Started running again in the mornings, through the neighborhood where she'd grown up. Her body remembered what it felt like, to move without exhaustion weighing her down. The house started changing too. Julius began working in the garden, pulling weeds from what used to be Linda's flower beds. They repainted the living room, from the beige it had been for 15 years, to a soft gray that let in more light. One Saturday, they went through Linda's closet together. All 3 of them. Cried over her favorite sweater, the one that still smelled like her perfume. Donated most of it to Goodwill, but kept some things. Her reading glasses, her recipe box, the Christmas ornaments she'd collected. They weren't erasing her, just making space to breathe. The second month, Minjun started coming to Sunday dinners. The first time was awkward. He stood on the porch holding a bottle of wine, like he wasn't sure he belonged there. Julius shook his hand, formal and stiff. Charles barely made eye contact. But by week 4, Minjun was helping Julius with the garden. They'd stand out there after dinner, talking about soil pH and tomato plants, about their mothers, who'd both worked themselves to death, trying to give their children better lives. Minjun called Jessie every night around 10, just before she went to bed. "Did you eat today?" he'd ask. Not controlling, just caring. He'd text during the day. Small things. "Saw this and thought of you," with a picture of a ridiculous coffee mug at Target. "How's your shift?" when he knew she was working. They weren't dating officially, hadn't even kissed. But they were building something real, through consistency, through showing up, through the small daily choices that meant more than grand gestures. Month 3. Week 6. Jessie drove to Miami to see Minjun's condo for the first time. It was nothing like she expected. Clean lines, lots of light, books everywhere. An espresso machine in the kitchen that probably cost more than her car payment. "I've been thinking about going back to school," she said, standing by the window overlooking Biscayne Bay. "Nurse practitioner program, but I put it on hold when Mom got sick, and then everything else happened." Minjun moved to stand beside her. "Apply." "I can't afford." "Apply," he said again. "I'll cover the costs. Investment in your future, not charity. You pay me back when you're making no problem money if you want, or don't. Either way, apply." She turned to look at him, really look at him. This man who'd helped her family without asking for anything in return, who called every night just to make sure she'd eaten, who was offering her a future when she'd forgotten she was allowed to have one. Why? She whispered. Because you deserve choices, Jessie. You deserve to decide what your life looks like. That's when she kissed him. Gentle at first, months of restrained wanting finally released. His hands came up to cup her face, careful of where the bruise had been, even though it was long healed. When they pulled apart, he showed her the second bedroom. When you're ready for your own space, you deserve choices. 3 months to the day after that Sunday morning at the dining table, Jessie stood in her mother's kitchen, making pot roast. Linda's recipe, the one from the stained index card in the recipe box. She looked out the window and saw Julius and Minjun in the garden, laughing about something. Charles was setting the table, folding napkins the way their mother used to. The tears came without warning. Not grief this time. Hope. Minjun came inside, saw her crying, immediately concerned. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, she managed. Everything is finally okay. That evening, on the back porch after dinner, she said it. I'm falling in love with you. Minjun smiled, soft and real. I fell months ago. She moved into the condo the following week. Got accepted to FIU's nurse practitioner program. Julius hit 90 days sober and celebrated with the whole family at his AA meeting. Everything looked like it was going to be okay. That's when Minjun's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him. A male voice, calm, professional. We have Charles Simon. The world stopped. Happiness in Minjun's world was always borrowed, always temporary. Because what comes next will test whether this family is truly healed or just pretending. Minjun was in a contractor meeting at his Coral Gables office when his phone rang. Wednesday, just after noon. He almost sent it to voicemail. Quarterly budget reviews weren't the time for interruptions, but the number showed as unknown. Something in his gut told him to answer. We have Charles, the voice said. Calm. Professional. David Watts, his lieutenant. Gym parking lot. 11:47 this morning. He's unharmed. For now. Minjun's hand tightened on the phone. Around him, 3 contractors kept talking about material costs and timelines. He stood, walked out of the conference room. What do you want? You step down. Transfer operations to me. Walk away clean, and the kid lives. David paused. Refuse, and we send him back in pieces. You have 24 hours. Let me talk to him. A moment of silence. Then Charles's voice, shaky and scared. Minjun, don't. The line cut off. Minjun stood in the hallway outside his office, staring at his reflection in the window. He'd known this day might come. Known that caring about people in his world made them targets. He just hadn't expected it to hurt like this. He made 3 phone calls in the next 5 minutes. By 2 p.m., he had the information he needed. Traffic cameras confirmed it. Charles had been taken from the LA Fitness parking lot at 11:47 a.m., thrown into a white cargo van. 3 men, professional and fast. By 3 p.m., his intelligence network had located the warehouse. Miami Port, South End, 6 guards. Charles inside, alive but probably terrified. Minjun studied the photos on his laptop. Knew immediately it was a trap. David wanted him dead, wanted control of the organization. Thought Minjun had gone soft. This wasn't just about power. It was about proving a point. At 4:45 p.m., Minjun pulled up to the Simon house in Tampa. His hands were steady on the wheel, but inside he was breaking apart. Jessie opened the door before he knocked. One look at his face and she knew. What happened? He walked inside without answering. Julius was in the living room, reading the Tampa Bay Times. Looked up when Minjun entered, and immediately set the paper down. Something's wrong. They sat at the dining table, the same table where they'd confessed everything 3 months ago, where they'd chosen to heal together. Minjun told them everything. The phone call, Charles taken from the gym, the warehouse at the port, David Watts staging a coup. They took him because of me, Minjun said, voice hollow. Because I fell in love with you. Because I let myself care about your family, and that made you vulnerable in my world. Jessie's face went white, then red. This is because of us? Because you and I. Where is he? Julius stood, fists clenched, the newspaper forgotten. Where's my son? Miami Port. I have the location. Minjun looked at both of them. This is my world, my problem. I'll handle it. You need to stay here, Stay safe. No. Jesse's voice cut through like a scalpel. He's my brother. We're family. We do this together. Jesse, you don't understand. You don't handle this alone. Julius moved to stand beside his daughter. What's the plan? Minjun stared at them. This family that had been broken 4 months ago, that was still learning to be whole again, was offering to walk into danger with him. It's a trap, he said finally. David wants me dead. He'll have 6 men, maybe more. If I show up alone, we both die. Then don't show up alone. Julius's voice was steady, sober, clear. Tell us the plan. So Minjun did. He'd appear to surrender. Walk in like David expected, hands visible, seemingly compliant. Julius would approach from the south entrance. His 30 years in construction meant he could navigate industrial spaces better than anyone. Jesse would stay in a vehicle 2 blocks away with Dr. Fern, Minjun's private physician, ready for medical support. 8 of Minjun's most loyal men would surround the warehouse. They'd move at 9:30 tomorrow morning, just before David's deadline. I can't ask you to do this, Minjun said. You're not asking. Jesse's hands were shaking, but her voice wasn't. We're telling you. We get Charles back together, or not at all. By midnight, 8 men had arrived at the house. They spread blueprints across the dining table, the same table where they'd eaten pot roast just days ago. Now it held tactical plans and photographs of the warehouse. Julius studied the schematics like he was reading construction plans. There's a maintenance tunnel here, he said, pointing. Service access for the electrical systems. I can get in through there, come up behind them. One of Minjun's men, James, looked impressed. That could work. Jesse was in the kitchen, organizing medical supplies. Gauze, antiseptic, trauma shears from the hospital. Her hands moved with the efficiency of someone who'd worked in emergency rooms for 6 years. She packed everything into her old Jansport backpack, the one she'd had since nursing school. None of them slept. At 5 a.m., Julius made coffee in the Mr. Coffee machine. They sat around the table in silence, drinking it black, watching the sky lighten outside the window. Minjun looked at Jesse, at Julius, at these people who'd become his family in the strangest, most unexpected way. Thank you, he said quietly. Julius nodded. Jesse reached across the table and took his hand. At 9:30 a.m., they'd learn what they were truly capable of when someone they loved was threatened. At 9:30 a.m., Minjun's black Mercedes pulled up to the warehouse at Miami Port. He got out slowly, hands visible, no weapon. The picture of compliance. Inside the car, James had been driving. Now he circled back to position, along with the other 7 men spreading out around the building's perimeter. 2 blocks away, Jessie sat in a Toyota 4Runner with Dr. Firm, Minjun's private physician. Her Jansport backpack of medical supplies was at her feet. She was praying, even though she hadn't prayed since her mother's funeral. Underground, Julius was moving through the maintenance tunnel he'd identified on the blueprints. 30 years of construction work meant he knew these spaces, the electrical conduits, the service access points, the ways buildings breathed that most people never saw. His phone was on silent. His hands were steady. Inside the warehouse, David Watts stood in the center of the concrete floor like he owned it. 6 men with him, armed and positioned strategically, and Charles, tied to a metal folding chair, his face bruised, lips split, but alive. The door opened. Minjun walked in, hands still visible. I brought the transfer documents, Minjun said calmly. Everything you asked for. Let Charles go first, then we talk. David laughed. You really think this is a negotiation? He walked closer, circling like a predator. You went soft, Min. The girl made you weak. Your father would be ashamed, running your empire like a corporation, dating some nurse, playing house with her broken family. Minjun's expression didn't change. I brought what you asked for. Here's the thing. David stopped in front of Charles, put a hand on his shoulder. Charles flinched. The brother dies anyway. Then we take his sister. That's how you really hurt a man like you. Take everything he cares about, piece by piece. That's when Minjun's mask dropped. His voice went cold in a way that made the temperature in the room shift. You made a critical mistake, David, threatening someone I love. His hand moved, a signal so subtle only someone watching for it would see. The doors exploded inward. James came through the front with 3 men, weapons drawn. Gunfire erupted sharp, deafening cracks that echoed off concrete walls. Not Hollywood action movie shooting. Real and terrifying and chaotic. Julius emerged from the south entrance, exactly where the maintenance tunnel led out. He moved with purpose, with the confidence of someone who'd spent 3 decades navigating job sites. Minjun was already moving toward Charles, dove behind a storage crate as bullets tore through the air. One of David's men went down, then another. Julius saw a guard turning toward Minjun. Didn't think, just moved. Tackled him, they went down hard, and Julius's fist connected with the man's jaw once, twice, until he stopped struggling. Then the burning in his thigh. Julius looked down, saw blood spreading across his jeans. Through and through, he thought distantly. He'd seen enough construction accidents to know. He kept moving, made it to Charles, cut the zip ties with a utility knife from his pocket. The same craftsman knife he'd carried for 30 years. "I've got you, son," he gasped. Charles was shaking. "Dad, you're bleeding." "I'm fine. Stay behind me." Across the warehouse, Minjun and David faced each other. The others were fighting, but this was personal. David came at him fast. Hand to hand, brutal and ugly. They crashed into a metal shelf, tools scattering. "She made you weak," David shouted, landing a punch to Minjun's ribs. Minjun blocked the next hit, countered with one of his own. "No." His voice was deadly calm. "She made me something worth protecting." He got David in a chokehold. Could have killed him easily, could have snapped his neck right there. Instead, he held on until David went limp, unconscious but alive. Mercy he was choosing because Jesse had taught him that strength didn't always mean violence. At 9:46, they emerged from the warehouse. Minjun bleeding from his shoulder, where a bullet had grazed him. Julius bleeding from his thigh, leaning heavily on Charles. Charles traumatized, shaking, but alive. Jesse saw them and abandoned every protocol she'd ever learned. Ran from the forerunner toward them, Dr. Fern shouting behind her. Then she switched. Became the ER nurse who'd worked codes at Tampa General for 6 years. Dr. Fern gauze, pressure bandages, now. Her hands moved to Julius's thigh, applying pressure. Through and through, femoral artery looks intact. Then to Minjun's shoulder. "Graze. You'll need stitches, but you'll live." Julius's legs gave out. The adrenaline that had kept him moving through the rescue was fading fast. James caught him, helped lower him to the ground. They got everyone into the vehicle. James driving, taking them to a private medical facility in Kendall that Minjun kept on retainer for situations exactly like this. In the back, Jesse worked on both men. Charles sat pressed against the window, shaking, watching his sister save his father, and the man who'd saved him. Julius reached out, grabbed Minjun's hand. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for not letting my boy die." Minjun squeezed back. "He's family." They'd survived. But in that moment, Jesse wondered what it had cost them, this violence, this terror, this proof that happiness in Minjun's world was never safe. She looked at Charles's haunted eyes, at the blood soaking through the gauze on her father's leg, at Minjun's torn shoulder. They'd gotten him back. But what came next? Charles is alive, Julius is bleeding, and Jesse's standing at the crossroads of 2 impossible worlds. What happens when the dust settles? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you're feeling this story, kindly like and subscribe to join the community. That night, they were all back at the Simon house in Tampa. Julius on the couch, leg elevated on pillows from Bed Bath & Beyond that Jesse had bought years ago. Minjun in the recliner, shoulder wrapped and immobilized in a sling. Charles in his old bedroom, door closed. Minjun had men positioned around the perimeter. No more surprises. No more threats slipping through. But inside, the real damage was quieter. At 2 a.m., Jesse came downstairs for water and found Charles in the kitchen. He was just standing there in the dark, staring at nothing. She didn't say anything, just stood beside him. "I thought I was going to die," Charles whispered. Sat in that chair for hours thinking about all the things I'd never get to say. Never apologized to you for running. Never thanked Dad for getting sober. Never... His voice broke. And then he was sobbing, the kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep and terrified. Jessie pulled him into her arms the way she used to when he was little and had nightmares. Let him cry into her shoulder while she stroked his hair. From the living room, Julius watched. He couldn't get up, his leg wouldn't let him, but he could see his children in the kitchen light, could see Jessie holding her brother together. Silent tears ran down his face. He was present for his children. Finally, actually present. The next morning, they gathered at the dining table, same table where they'd confessed everything 4 months ago. where they'd chosen to heal. Now they had to choose again. Julius spoke first, his voice rough. I shot a man yesterday. Took him down to protect you, Charles. And the thing that terrifies me? I'd do it again. I'm not sorry. Charles looked at his father. Really looked at him. You saved my life, Dad. You came through that warehouse like the dad I remembered before Mom died. I was wrong about you. About us. Minjun stared at his hands. This happened because of me. Because I brought my world into your lives. Charles was taken because someone wanted to hurt me through the people He stopped. I'm sorry isn't enough. Stop. Jesse's voice was firm. You're part of this family now. That means when someone threatens one of us, we all fight back. Together. That's what family does. They sat there for 2 hours, processing the violence, the fear, the reality that loving each other meant accepting danger. Julius talked about what it felt like to hurt someone. Charles admitted he couldn't close his eyes without seeing that warehouse. Minjun explained the measures he was taking to make sure this never happened again. In the end, they chose each other, despite everything. The first week after was the hardest. Julius threw himself into recovery. Physical therapy 3 times a week at the Tampa clinic, working to get strength back in his leg. He went to AA meetings every night, talked to his sponsor about what it meant to hurt someone sober, to make that choice clear-headed and still not regret it. Charles saw a therapist 3 times a week. PTSD treatment, the doctor called it, learning to process trauma instead of burying it. Jesse worked extra shifts at Tampa General. Needed the routine, the familiar rhythm of rounds and charting and patients who needed her to be competent and steady. Minjun restructured his entire organization, removed everyone whose loyalty was questionable, made it crystal clear that his family was off limits, always. Week 2, Julius had a crisis. The nightmares had been getting worse. Flashbacks to the warehouse, to his hands on that guard's throat. One afternoon, he drove to the Publix on Dale Mabry and bought a bottle of Jameson. Sat in his phone 50 in the parking lot for an hour, just staring at it. Then he called Minjun. I'm about to throw away 5 months, Julius said when Minjun answered. Sitting in my truck with a bottle and I can't make myself pour it out. Minjun was at his Miami office. Where are you? Publix, Dale Mabry. Stay on the phone with me. Minjun grabbed his keys, headed for his car. I'm leaving now. 4 hours. But I'm staying on this call the entire time, you understand? Julius's voice cracked. Okay. So Minjun drove north on I-75. Hands-free call connected the whole way. He didn't lecture, didn't give advice, just talked. About his own mother, who'd worked herself to death. About the times he'd wanted to fall back into his father's brutal way of running things because it felt easier than trying to be better. You think my sobriety from my old life has been easy? Minjun said somewhere around Fort Myers. I've made choices that keep me up at night, but I'm still choosing to be better. That's what recovery is choosing, every day. By the time Minjun pulled into the Publix parking lot, the sun was setting. Julius was still sitting there, bottle still unopened. Minjun got in the truck. You want to throw away 5 months because the world got complicated? He asked quietly. I hurt someone. I'm not sorry about it. What kind of man does that make me? The kind who protects his son. The kind who shows up when it matters. Julius looked at the bottle. Then he got out of the truck, walked to the garbage can at the edge of the parking lot, and poured the whiskey out. All of it. They drove to the AA meeting at Street Michael's together. That week, Julius got his 5-month chip. Jesse, Charles, and Minjun were all there, clapping until their hands hurt. Week 3, Charles made a decision. He was going back to UF to finish his degree. Not running away this time, choosing his future. He'd come home every other weekend. Sunday dinners were non-negotiable. I need to finish what I started, he told them at dinner. But I'm not disappearing. You're stuck with me. 1 month after the warehouse, Jesse and Minjun were alone in the Miami condo. She'd been quiet all evening, and he knew her well enough now to recognize when she was working up to something. What did you really do to David Watts? She asked. Minjun could have lied, could have deflected. Instead, he was honest. Korea. He's working in a factory I own there. Manual labor. He'll never leave, but he's alive, contained. He paused. I showed him mercy because of you. Because you've been teaching me that strength doesn't always mean violence. Jessie sat with that information. This man she loved had the power to make people disappear, to end lives, to operate in a world she'd never fully understand. Thank you, she said quietly, for not killing him. They'd survived the crisis. chosen recovery over fear, chosen each other despite the cost. But there was still one piece of healing left. One conversation they hadn't had. It was time to talk to Linda, Sunday morning in October. 6 months after the bruise. 4 months after the warehouse. The air had that Florida autumn quality, still warm, but gentler somehow. Less oppressive. Jessie stood in the kitchen of the Tampa house, pouring coffee from the Mr. Coffee machine into travel mugs. Charles came downstairs first, home from UF for the weekend. Then Julius, moving easier now that his leg had healed. Finally Minjun, who'd driven up from Miami the night before. Nobody said much. They all knew where they were going. It had been 2 years since Linda's funeral. 2 years since any of them had visited her grave together. They'd been too broken, too scattered, too busy surviving to go back. But today felt different. Today, they were ready. The cemetery was 20 minutes away, Garden of Peace Memorial Park off of Hillsborough. Linda had picked it herself during those last months, when she was still well enough to make decisions. She'd liked that it had oak trees, and that you could hear birds. They parked, and walked together across the grass. Julius carried something wrapped in a tarp. Wouldn't tell them what it was. Linda's grave was under one of those oak trees she'd wanted. Simple granite headstone. Linda Marie Simon, beloved wife and mother, 1968 to 2024. All 4 of them stood there, and the weight of her absence was both crushing and comforting. She was gone. But they were here. Together. Julius kneeled first. Touched her name carved into the stone. "I'm sorry I fell apart when you died," he said, voice rough. "I'm sorry I failed our kids. You told me to take care of them, and instead I became another person they had to take care of. I drank. I gambled. I hit our daughter." He wiped his eyes. "But I'm trying now, Linda. 6 months sober, working at a good job, present for the kids in ways I haven't been since you got sick. I took a bullet for our son. Got to be his father when it mattered most." He paused. "I'm the man you married again. Or I'm trying to be. Every single day." Charles knelt beside his father, put a hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry I ran, Mom," Charles said. "I hid at school because watching you guys fall apart after you died was too painful. Easier to pretend I had a normal life than deal with the fact that our family was broken." His voice cracked. "But I'm home now. Not full-time, but present. And Dad," he looked at Julius. "Dad saved me. Came through that warehouse exactly like you always said he would. You married the right man, Mom. You always knew that, even when the rest of us forgot." Jessie couldn't kneel, she'd start crying and never stop. So she just stood there, arms wrapped around herself. "I miss you every day," she whispered. "Miss calling you after hard shifts to complain about difficult patients. Miss your pot roast with the carrots cut too big, because you never had the patience for proper dicing. Miss your terrible jokes that only Dad laughed at." She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "I've been drowning for 2 years, Mom. Working 2 jobs, carrying Dad and Charles, trying to keep our house, our family, everything you built. I almost lost myself completely." Jessie looked at Minjun, standing a respectful distance back. She reached for his hand, pulled him forward. "This is Minjun," she said. "He's Korean. He's older than me, and his world is complicated in ways you would have worried about. But he takes care of me the way Dad took care of you. He sees me, not just what I can do for people, but me, the person underneath all the responsibility." She smiled through tears. "I'm going back to school, getting my no-problem certification, the thing I put on hold when you got sick, and I'm letting people help me instead of carrying everything alone. You always told me I was allowed to be human, not just useful. I'm finally learning what you meant." Minjun stepped forward, respectful and humble in a way Jessie had never seen him in his business world. "Mrs. Simon," he said quietly, "I love your daughter. I know my world is dangerous. Your husband got shot because of me. Your son was kidnapped because someone wanted to hurt me. I can never apologize enough for bringing that into their lives." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But I promise I'll protect your family. I'll take care of Jessie not by controlling her or making decisions for her, but by standing beside her while she builds the life she wants. I'll support Julius and Charles. I'll show up for Sunday dinners and garden work, and all the small, ordinary moments that make family real." His voice dropped lower. "I know I'm not what you would have chosen for your daughter, but I'll spend my life proving I'm worthy of her anyway." Julius stood, put his hand on Minjun's shoulder. "Linda would have loved you, son," he said firmly. She always said the best men are the ones who show up, even when it's hard. You've shown up for all of us. You're family now. Then Julius unwrapped the tarp. Inside was a wooden bench he'd built himself in his small apartment, his first woodworking project since before Linda got sick. Simple, sturdy, beautiful. He and Minjun positioned it near the headstone. There was a small brass plaque on the back. The Simon family. Together always. They sat together on that bench, talked to Linda like she was still with them, telling her about their lives, not haunting anymore, blessing. That evening, they gathered at the Tampa house for Sunday dinner. Their sacred tradition. Jessie made pot roast using Linda's recipe. She'd finally perfected it, the carrots cut too big, just like her mother used to do. Before they ate, Julius said grace. Something he hadn't done since Linda died. Thank you for this food, for this family, for second chances we didn't deserve but got anyway, he said, holding Jessie's hand on one side, Charles's on the other. Thank you for bringing us back together. Linda, we love you. We'll keep going forward, but we'll never forget you. There was laughter around that table. Warmth. Charles told a story about a ridiculous professor at UF. Julius talked about his new role as regional manager, promotion he'd earned, not been given. Minjun listened, smiled, fit perfectly into their chaos. After dinner, Charles and Julius cleaned up their new tradition, since Jessie had cooked. She and Minjun went out to the back porch, where they could see the garden Julius had rebuilt, right in the spot where Linda used to grow tomatoes. The sun was setting, painting everything orange and pink. Minjun pulled something from his pocket, a key on a simple ring. I bought the house next door, he said. Jessie stared at him. What? 3 bedrooms, needs renovation. When you finish your no-problem program, when you're ready, we could live there. Close enough for Sunday dinners, but ours. You bought a house? In Tampa? Jessie's voice rose. But your business is in Miami. I can split time. I've got good people managing the Miami operations. He looked at her steadily. This is where your family is. This is where you'll work when you're a nurse practitioner. I'm not asking you to choose between me and them. I'm choosing all of you. He took her hand. I know it's early for proposals, but I'm asking if you see a future. Here, with me, with this complicated, beautiful, broken, and healing family we've built, because I do. I see Sunday dinners and arguments and garden work and growing old together. I see everything, Jessie. She was crying now, the good kind of crying. I see it too, and it terrifies me, because I've never wanted something this much. But yes, yes to the future. Yes to the house. Yes to building this life together. Yes to all of it. When he kissed her, it was gentle and certain and full of promise. Inside, they could hear Julius and Charles laughing about something in the kitchen. 1 year after the bruise, everything had changed. Julius was 1 year sober, celebrated at his AA meeting with his whole family there, clapping and crying. He'd been promoted to regional manager, visited Linda's grave every Sunday, and went to grief counseling because he was finally ready to process losing her. Charles graduated from UF that spring semester, had a job lined up in Tampa, earned through actual interviews, not given because of connections. He managed his PTSD with therapy twice a week and planned to stay close to family. The running away was done. Jessie was thriving in FIU's nurse practitioner program, top of her class. She and Minjun lived in the renovated house next door to her childhood home. She worked part-time at Tampa General, finally healthy and rested and genuinely happy. Minjun had legitimized most of his operations, ran a successful construction and import business, still had connections to the Korean organization, but the dangerous parts were managed by others. He'd learned to garden with Julius, was teaching Charles about business, and was deeply, completely in love with Jessie. Spring came to Tampa with its usual warmth. Sunday dinner found them all at the table: Julius, Charles, Jessie, Minjun. Laughter constant, love tangible in the way they passed dishes and interrupted each other's stories. After dinner, they drove to the cemetery, sat on the bench Julius had built, watching the sunset together. We made it, Linda, Julius said, hand on the headstone. We almost didn't. There were days I wasn't sure we would. But the kids are happy. I'm sober. We're a family again, different than before, but real. Jessie leaned against Minjun, held her father's hand, watched Charles pick up sticks from around the grave the way he used to as a kid. 4 people who'd been broken by grief, who'd almost destroyed each other, who'd been saved by unexpected love, who'd chosen healing. Everything wasn't perfect. Healing wasn't linear. But they were together. They were trying. They were family. And in the ways that mattered most, that was everything. Jessie chose the dangerous truth over the safe lie. She chose healing over hiding. She chose family. The one she was born into, and the one she built. Would you make the same choice? Drop your answer in the comments below. If this story touched you, hit that like button and subscribe to join the community. Because real love begins when someone sees you drowning and doesn't just throw a rope, they jump in the water beside you. See you in the next story.